It's a constant struggle trying to get a toddler to eat vegetables. So when I saw this recipe for a savory, cheesy carrot cake in the Savoy cookbook, I had to try it out and see what my child would think. I'm sure that's exactly the target demographic that the authors had in mind. So I'm starting by grating 200 grams of carrots. It's pretty much one large carrot. I'm grating it as finely as possible so that we end up with a smooth consistency. Once it's grated, I'm going to throw it in a pan with 20 grams of butter. The recipe says to sweat it for about 4 minutes. I went for a little bit longer. I just want to cook down the carrots a little bit more. This also wasn't enough butter to coat the carrots, so I wasn't confident that it would transfer the heat as well. So I just kept stirring it, making sure it was cooked thoroughly. Next up, we need 100 grams of potato. That's about half of a white potato. I'm going to boil that until it's soft. It's about 20 minutes. Then I'll mash it through a sieve. This could have gone for a little bit longer because it's a little bit tough to push through. So I'd say overboil it. And also it would be easier to take off the skin before doing this. Just kind of gets in the way as you're trying to press it through. Just keep smushing it through and occasionally scrape the bottom of the sieve. Now to bind this mixture together, we need some cheese. The recipe calls for 50 grams of Gruyere, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I'm just going to follow the recipe and see how it turns out. I'll grate that on the larger side of the grater just to make things go a little bit faster and because it'll melt. And we need 1 egg. I'll beat that thoroughly and mix it all in. Season with some salt and some fresh black pepper. Mix that all together. Then we need some vessels to put these in. I'm using these ramekins, but you can choose whatever shape you want. I'm going to butter the insides and then dust them with flour so that in theory nothing sticks. Then I'll fill these up to the top. And these came out kind of tall, so if you're using a similar shape ramekin to me, I would only fill it halfway, and then you can get 4 out of it. I'll cover those up with plastic wrap. And the extra flour and butter on the sides of the ramekins were preventing the plastic wrap from sticking, so I ended up using rubber bands to hold it on. Either way, we want to steam these guys for 20 minutes until they're fully cooked. Next up, we're going to make a sauce, which they call a tomato coulis. It's sort of a fancy tomato soup that's going to go on the bottom of this. So into a pan, I'll throw 20 more grams of butter, along with some minced garlic. This calls for 1 clove. I'm going to use these 3 small cloves because that's what I got left. We're also going to add 40 grams of finely chopped onion. That's about half of a small onion. And don't worry about getting too fine with all of this. We're going to run it through a sieve later, as is the way of fine dining. I'm going to sweat those with the butter until they are transparent. Then I'm going to quarter 400 grams of plum tomatoes. That's about 5 or 6 of these. I'll throw those in along with 40 grams of tomato puree. I'll throw in 100 mils of vegetable stock. They called for making your own vegetable stock, which you can totally do if you want to, but I just bought some from the store. I know it's not as good, but just make sure you go for the low sodium kind, because my coulis turned out a little bit salty. Next, it called for 6 stalks of basil with leaves. Seems like a lot of basil, but whatever. I'm going to cover that up and simmer it for about 20 minutes until the tomatoes are soft. Then I'll run it through a sieve. And personally, I would have just blitzed this in a food processor. Would have made it a lot easier. Then I could have run it through a sieve after that, because crushing tomatoes in this fashion is a lot of work. Anyway, once that's done, we'll throw it back into the pan, season with salt and pepper. I realized this pan was a little bit big for the amount of sauce that we're making, so I transferred it to a smaller one. I reduced it for a few minutes until it was a little bit thicker. Made a quick chiffonade of some more basil leaves. And toss those in, along with 45 more grams of butter, which is a lot, but hey, this is French cooking, so it is what it is. And once that's all melted and mixed together, it's good to go. So I'll take out my ramekins from the steamer. And of course I'm going to plate this up on my daughter's favorite green plate. Now the ramekins are really hot at this point, so they're pretty hard to handle. I tried to tap the carrot cakes out of here. I mean, we did flour the ramekins and butter them as well, but that didn't seem to work. So I had to go around the edges with a knife, which worked okay. Anyway, presentation doesn't matter too much for a 2-year-old. Either way, we're gonna put a little bit of that coulis around the bottom. And the recipe does call for some glazed carrots as decoration, but I got distracted by a 2-year-old and mine burnt, so they did not go into the plate. Anyway, here's what the food critic thought. Do you like the tomato sauce? Not really?
A little bit sour.
It's a little bit sour. Oh. Do you want to try the carrot cake?
Yum!
And she did not eat the rest, for the record. But either way, let me give it a taste and I'll let you guys know. Now, once the ramekins cool down a little bit, it is a lot easier to get them out cleanly. So I recommend giving them a little bit of time to set. You can see how nice this is. You can also see how tall it is, and maybe half the size would make more sense as an appetizer. You could also slice this into little discs for a more fancy look. And yeah, this is pretty good actually. It's not too carrot forward. The potatoes and the cheese really balance everything out and make it taste cheesy and potatoey. And that coulis is a really nice thick tomato soup. You could probably have that on its own as well, or with a grilled cheese. I will note that I used salted butter throughout this recipe when unsalted was called for, because it was just what I had in the fridge and I'm not going to spend extra money on extra butter, but everything did turn out a little bit salty, so I don't know if it was that or if it was the vegetable stock. Either way, try and limit the amount of seasoning that you do otherwise. But yeah, all in all, pretty good dish, so hope you try it out. See you next time.